Now, we are going to talk about the leaf changing with the colors, and we do have, as I mentioned, a special guest to help talk a little bit more about the leaf peeking or peeping season here in Virginia. I want to welcome to the show Ellen Powell from the Virginia Department of Forestry. Good morning, Ellen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk a lot about the leaf colors and the changing with all that, but I wanted to get your thoughts as somebody with the Department of Forestry on just how dangerous wildfires can be. You know, we've had, the wildfire season come through. There were some issues with smoke from other wildfires finding their way into the Commonwealth earlier in the season. How are we doing across the Commonwealth? And then if you could talk a little bit about the importance of really, minding those things like cigarette butts and those things that can cause wildfires.
Sure. Well, in Virginia, our primary fire season is from mid-February through the end of April. So we're well past that time, but we have a secondary fall fire season. It starts around the 15th of October and goes through the end of November. And the reason those are called fire seasons is that the weather conditions tend to be conducive to wildfires getting out of control. So as you said earlier, just a carelessly discarded cigarette butt or deciding to burn that pile of fall leaves that's been sitting around the yard on a day when the humidity's low and the winds are up is just asking for trouble.
You think about I didn't even think about leaf burning, and we haven't had a lot of fall, leaf fall so far here in the Southeast, but that's a great point. I mean, you get something like that where embers from a fire can just blow a little bit and can lead to drier brush, and that can be a bigger issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and
yes,
it's interesting. You mentioned the spring and the fall kind of fire seasons kind of coincides a little bit with our severe weather seasons, our primary severe season in the spring. But there is a secondary kind of window for some severe weather as we transition summer to winter as well. Kind of interesting. Wanted to talk to you about the drought situation as well. For Hampton Roads, we're in good shape. Have you noticed or have you had reports from the Department of Forestry on the dry conditions over the Blue Ridge at all? Has that been an issue at all for you guys?
Well, it's definitely been an issue from late summer through up to now, really. Northern Virginia and the northern part of the valley have been really dry, and we haven't been thinking about it over the summer so much in terms of fire danger as we have in terms of tree health. Those conditions are not great for forest trees or landscape trees in communities and towns either. So when you add other stresses to that mixture, such as insect defoliation or other types of stresses like disease or competition with invasive species and all sorts of other problems, then it really does stress the trees out and becomes one factor that can cause trees to have significant decline.
Ellen, I thank you so much for taking the time to talk about that. Truth be told, full transparency here, we brought you on to talk about leaf colors and changing, and we threw this at you, and you being the expert that you are, you're like, come on, Craig, let's talk. So I love it. Thank you so much. We will turn our attention again here in Hampton Roads just to finish up on the wildfire danger. We're doing okay as far as our soil moisture goes. Down into North Carolina, it's dry. Bottom line, folks need to be careful with that elevated fire risk today. All right, we are going to turn our attention to the changing of the leaves and the leaf colors. So, Ellen, let's get into this. Right now, I've got this graphic up, why leaves change, and you can speak a little bit to the conditions that folks are seeing, but I want my director to take this full. And basically what we're seeing, this is a time of year where we start to see the colors coming in. And again, the reason with the cooler weather, trees' chlorophyll breaks down, leaving other chemicals to cause the color changes. And you can see some of the different things. This is a graphic that's up right now. We are into that season. I want to ask you, Ellen, about what's happening now out in the state. I drove 64 and then 81 through the corridor there over the weekend, coming through West Virginia and back here. Noticed some color, but I thought, is it me or do the colors seem just a little delayed from some of the vibrant colors we've seen in maybe, say, the past years?
They are a bit muted this year. It is notoriously hard to predict when, for example, what people call peak coloration is going to be in any given area. And early this season in central Virginia, for example, because of the really extreme dry weather in August and September, we were seeing some trees start to color a little bit in September. And then we got a little rain, and the temperatures stayed higher and things just sort of slowed down. So it can kind of go in fits and starts. Right now, the highest mountains in Virginia, like Grayson Highlands and Highland County, and those areas that have really high mountains, some parts of the Cumberland Plateau that are at elevation, those areas are at or a little bit past peak foliage right now. Peak meaning when the most trees have turned at one time. As we come into central Virginia, we have more of a long, extended fall color season because we have a big diversity of species, and different species change color at different times. Color is going to be inevitable everywhere that you have deciduous trees. The intensity of it can relate to weather conditions. The best red colors, for example, come when we've had consistently sunny days and cool, clear nights. That develops the best reds. But yellows you will get pretty consistently just based on the fact that the days are getting shorter and the weather is getting cooler. That yellow is already there. It's just as the green color chlorophyll fades away, as the tree shuts down its production of food, then you start to see the yellow that was there all along and just invisible. The reds come, as I said, when the weather starts to change and the days shorten and the leaves build up sugars in them in certain species that get trapped, and that causes the reds to form.
This is such great information. We've been showing some video at times while you were talking. I want to let our viewers know those videos that we've been showing from Madison County, Augusta County, Amherst, and also around Waynesboro. Really some beautiful color there that they're seeing on the screen. As we take a look at kind of the fall foliage maps that we get updated from Explore Fall, we are seeing some of the color, high color coming in. It was really interesting, your point about the diversity of the species kind of prolonging the color, because you do see some areas where you see it change over pretty quickly. There's a brilliant display and then gone, and that would be where you have more of the same types of trees, I would imagine. So very interesting. So what areas would you say right now, if you were going to recommend to our viewers, like, hey, these are the areas where you could really see some pretty awesome color right now, what parts of the Commonwealth would you recommend?
This week, I would recommend the Shenandoah Valley all the way up to the tip top of Virginia. I was there late last week, and it was getting quite pretty, so I think right now it'll probably be even better. I would also consider probably the whole Blue Ridge in general. And oftentimes you do see the best color from the road. Those trees that are right along the road tend to change sometimes sooner because they're more exposed. And if you're looking out across a vast expanse of the mountains, you might just see more of a patchwork. And there will always be, for quite a couple more weeks, there will be a lot of oaks that haven't changed color yet because they tend to be late. So there will be interspersed with green, but it's kind of a patchwork with the red maples and black gums and sugar maples and all of that interspersed. And the hickories are starting to look really good in central Virginia now. So if you like the really clear, bright yellow, this is the time to be in central Virginia, central to northern Virginia.
Wow. Yeah, my wife and I went up to Harper's Ferry last year, and actually, so we hiked the trail to the top, and the colors were spectacular when you get up close. I mean, it was amazing to see some of the brilliant colors with the fall foliage. But I think it's interesting you mentioned also from just the roads, you can see kind of the broader picture and you see the landscape. So kind of a neat way to check that out. I noticed as we're taking a look at our fall foliage map, I'm going to go ahead and ask the director to take this full because, we're zoomed in here along the Blue Ridge, but down to the south, like into North Carolina around Boone, they're actually past peak or right at peak, kind of passing peak, and that extends down a little farther to the southwest into North Carolina. It's kind of interesting. It's not just temperature related, but I guess the species of trees that peak at different times. Is that right? Because you wouldn't think down south, you think typically maybe a little bit warmer, maybe they would have a slower peak, but we are seeing some areas starting to peak already farther south.
Yes. So the areas obviously of high elevation, whether they're north and south, elevation is like geography in a way. If you go up higher, it's like you're going farther north. So you will see different species growing at high elevations that may change with a different intensity of color and at a different time. But our fall foliage tends to go from west to east across the state and just kind of slowly moving across. The species that change super early are things like black gum and some of the vines like Virginia creeper, shrubs like sumac, and you'll start to see those along roadsides all over the state, sometimes as early as September, just here and there, but they really get into form in early October, and then the red maples are kind of a mid-season. Red maples and the hickories that turn yellow are kind of a mid-season, I would call now mid-season for our foliage, and late season, late October, even into November, especially in your part of the state, you'll get the oaks finally changing. They're the last to go, and they have a different intensity of color. They're more of a jewel tone, like amber and russet and deep crimson, so they're not quite as flashy as a red maple, but they're still really beautiful.
Ellen, you've been incredibly generous with your time. You've handled some curveballs we've thrown at you. I want to thank you so much for coming on out to spend some time with us this morning, and appreciate the work you're doing in the Virginia Department of Forestry. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the fall foliage.